This is your voice, your vote.
And good morning. Welcome to Your Voice, Your Vote. I'm Lincoln Graves. Steve Dunn has the morning off. Dangerous and destructive wildfires in Oregon, Washington, and California are the big stories of this past week. In California, the Carr Fire in Redding killed 6 people. 2 of the victims were children. That fire destroyed more than 1,000 buildings, most of them homes. In Washington state, the Milepost 90 fire near the town of Wishram burned about 15,000 acres. And in Oregon, the South Valley fire near Dufur, fueled by dry summer, destroying homes and burning 100,000 acres of land. Wildfires have a big impact emotionally and economically in the communities they strike. Joining me now, a farmer, former small business owner, and Oregon Congressman Schrader. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Lincoln. Good to be here.
All right, let's talk about some of these fires. This wildfire season has been really devastating so far. It was last year as well, and it seems like the summers keep getting hotter and drier. So we find ourselves asking this question, is this the new normal?
The answer, in my opinion, is yes. I remember, when I was young in Oregon, you could count the 90-degree days on one hand in the summer in Western Oregon. That is no longer true. Summer starts sometimes in February for a bit, May, and runs all through the season. And it's perfect conditions to, unfortunately, make these lightning strikes blow out of proportion despite the best efforts of our firefighters out there. Points to the need to make sure that we're getting into these forests earlier and making sure there's not as much fuel load in the forest so that we can control things and prevent the devastation in California, Oregon, and Washington we've been seeing.
And as we've seen, it's not always just forest land. You have a farm in Canby, so you know the challenges that farmers face under certain conditions. How do farmers whose crops were destroyed recover from this kind of a disaster?
Well, it can be tough. A lot of farmers in the Midwestern part of our country and in the South have a crop insurance. Very common. They're monocultures, so they know what they're getting. In Oregon, we have such a diverse group of specialty crops. It's tough to buy insurance for a specific crop. I say our wheat farmers are probably the exception to the rule. So a lot of the guys with wheat up there, hopefully they have their insurance, policies, and they will recover some of the value. Certainly not what they would have if they'd been able to harvest that crop. It is tough for them to come back. And to me, this wildfire funding fix that we just passed in Congress this year, bipartisan deal. I worked with Mike Simpson from Idaho. Senator Wyden worked with Senator Crapo from Idaho. We got it in the budget bill. It's going to be a game changer, hopefully, to prevent these fires from getting out of control, threatening people, threatening homes, threatening farmers' livelihoods.
And more on that bipartisan work. Yeah. Of course, Republicans and Democrats don't always see eye to eye, but here in the western states, they're facing the same issues here. So were you surprised by that cooperation? Did you see it coming? Just give me your thoughts on that.
In this case, not so much. It came up because we've had, as you pointed out earlier, some devastating fires for several years now. Even under the Obama administration, there was an interest in maybe getting after this. Your western legislators, something we can rally around no matter what part from. The devastation is severe and real to homes and to livelihoods. So we've been pushing this for quite some time. Frankly, the Speaker of the House was a bit of an obstruction. He didn't want wildfires to be included as a disaster. Believe it or not, it's crazy. It was only the FEMA money, the Federal Emergency Management Funds, was only supposed to be used for floods and hurricanes. And out here out west, we said that's totally wrong. I mean, wildfires are equally devastating. So we finally were able to convince enough of our colleagues and get it in the bipartisan budget bill we passed. And we've been working on it for 4 or 5 years now. And frankly, Forest Service, half of their budget has gone to fighting fires, so they can't get in and do the work to mitigate these fires at an earlier stage. In 2 years, once this comes into effect, it's going to be a game changer.
Okay, so Oregonians, they'll hear that this has been passed, this is in the works or whatever. What will it do for Oregonians?
Well, what it will do, it's going to, number one, be patient. We passed it in the budget here. It won't take effect until the 2019 budget, which means in fall of 2019 and for the summer of 2020 will be when this new money, if you will be available. What it means to Oregonians is that, with all our federal lands out here, probably almost half of our state is federal lands, either Bureau of Land Management or Forest Service. For the first time, instead of having to use half of their budget that they get allocated every year to fight fires, they can use that new money, almost twice the money they've had before, to get in there, do some prescribed burning, do some thinning, prevent these fires from getting out of control. And if they do burn, they're not going to burn as hot or as heavy or be as likely to blow up to this catastrophic fire. It means, frankly, less danger. It means, frankly, your crops aren't going to get burned. You might actually be able to do a little forestry and support your local community.
Let's talk more about farmers being impacted, because I do want to touch on one more question. Oregon's 2 senators would like some of the $12 billion the Trump administration promised to farmers in trade war relief to be made available to Oregon farmers devastated by fires. So do you see that happening?
Well, I think that's a fair ask. That $12 billion, that's total bull. That's the president trying, with all due respect, trying to buy off American farmers. And there's not a single, I think there are very few American farmers willing to buy into that. They want to be able to farm. They want to earn their own livelihood. They don't want a welfare check from the president of the United States.
So you believe that this is simply...
It's just pure politics, Lincoln. He's trying to he realizes that farmers are being devastated by his trade policies. We're losing market share as we speak. Millions of bushels of wheat, corn, soy, whatever, all our specialty crops, vegetables, fruits, sitting on the docks, not being able to get anywhere. The retaliation is devastating to American agriculture. We sell in Oregon most of our produce overseas. And we've been building these markets for the last 2 decades. The president's taking them away overnight.
And finally, about wildfires, do you hear about them from your constituents?
Oh, yeah.
Are they asking you questions?
Oh, yeah. No, this is a big deal. My district, the middle of Willamette Valley and Central Oregon coast, I met with the regional forester just earlier today to get an assessment of how this new money might be used. What are our conditions in the mid-Willamette Valley right now? People are upset that whitewater fire last year impacted my district in a very big way. Good news is I think our folks are learning as we go forward. We're one of the few states where the Oregon Department of Forestry works hand in glove with the federal agencies to make sure these fires hopefully don't get out of control. 90% of the fires, they're able to keep to 10 acres or less. Unfortunately, those that get away from us, they can be very devastating.
Okay, we're going to move on to some other topics now. We're going to talk more about wildfires in the next section of this show. But right now, I want to talk to you about Russian interference in the U.S. elections. The midterms, they are just a few months away, less than 100 days. How concerned are you that the country is not fully prepared to deal with meddling?
Well, I'm very concerned we're not prepared. The good news, Oregon's going to be in much better shape compared to any other state in the union by vote by mail. I remember when I first came to Congress, they would give me good-natured grief about, my fraud-prone system of just all this paper floating about. Every state in the union probably wishes they had vote by mail right now. It's nice you have our citizens. That the Senate Intelligence Committee still is bipartisan, still working. The House one fell completely apart. But the Senate one is working. They're making recommendations, and I hope within the next month or two you're going to see recommendations made in other states that are much more vulnerable than Oregon to prevent the hacking. One other piece that's interesting for hopefully listeners and viewers is that there are now companies that are much like Facebook and Google and Twitter, they're identifying when they're being hacked, if you will, when these sites are not legitimate. They're either foreign sites or computer-generated sites to look like people commenting on things. So hopefully the Oregon voter will be a lot more aware of when it's real and when it's not real.
Are you optimistic? Does it worry you to the point where it's too worrying, or do you think it will get through this somehow?
I think we'll get through this at the end of the day. Again, for Oregonians, I think we're in really good shape. Your vote is going to count. Your vote will be your vote, not somebody else's. But the disinformation campaign is real. This is the day and age we live in. Much like climate change is making it tough for our farmers and forestry people, the disinformation campaigns we're seeing around the world going to make it tougher for honest citizens who want to do the right thing and get good information. They're going to have to do their due diligence and look at all the different sources that are out there, not just KATU, sorry, but others too. You guys do a good job to make sure they're getting accurate information so they can make the best judgment possible.
Another topic here, since President Trump was elected, the Affordable Care Act has undergone some changes, big changes. Yeah. You belong to a group trying to save the ACA. You're a Democrat, but are there Republicans in the group who support what you're trying to do?
Oh, yeah. What was fascinating, Lincoln, is when the Republicans were trying to repeal the ACA last year, they got a shock. They found out that many of their constituents in their red states really liked the Affordable Care Act.